The Roman calendar changed its form several times between the founding of Rome and the fall of the Roman Empire. The common calendar widely used today is known as the Gregorian calendar and is a refinement of the Julian calendar, where the length of the year has been adjusted from 365.25 days to 365.2425 days. From at least the period of Augustus on, calendars were often inscribed in stone and displayed publicly. Such calendars are called fasta. History. The original Roman calendar is believed to have been a lunar calendar, which may have been based on one of the Greek lunar calendars. As the time between new moons averages 29.5 days, its months were constructed to be either hollow or full. Calendar of Romulus. Roman writers attributed the original Roman calendar to Romulus, the mythical founder of Rome, though there is no other evidence for the existence of such a calendar, and Romulus was often cited as the founder of practices whose origins were unknown to later Romans. According to these writers, Romulus' calendar had 10 months, with the spring equinox in the first month. The regular calendar year thus consisted of 304 days, with the winter days after the end of December and before the beginning of the following March not being assigned to any month. The origins of the names are also not entirely clear or agreed upon by modern scholars. Some ancient explanations are Martius in honor of Mars, the god of war; Aprilis from Aperia, to open. Earth opens to receive seed; Maius from Maia, goddess of growth; Ilunius from Ilunia. The remaining 6 months were named with respect to their position on the calendar, the numbers 5 to 10 in Latin being quinque, sex, septem, octo, novem and decem. The months were named quintilis, sextilis, September, October, November, and December. Calendar of Numa. Further reforms were attributed, again without firm evidence, to Numa Pompilius, the second of the 7 traditional kings of Rome. The Romans considered even numbers to be unlucky, so Numa took 1 day from each of the 6 months with 30 days, reducing the number of days in the 10 previously defined months by a total of 6 days. There were 51 previously unallocated winter days, to which were added the 6 days from the reductions in the days in the months, making a total of 57 days. These he made into 2 months, January and February, which he prefixed to the previous 10 months. January was given 29 days, while February had the unlucky number of 28 days, suitable for the month of purification. This made a regular year 355 days long in place of the previous 304 days of the Romulus calendar. Of the 11 months with an odd number of days, 4 had 31 days each and 7 had 29 days each. Reforms of Gnaeus Flavius. In 304 BC, Gnaeus Flavius, a pontifical secretary, introduced a series of reforms. It is generally believed that he initiated the custom of publishing the calendar in advance of the month, depriving the pontiffs of some of their power, but allowing for a more consistent calendar for official business. The Julian calendar. Julius Caesar, as Pontifex Maximus, reformed the calendar in 46 BC. The new calendar became known as the Julian calendar. Quintilis was renamed Lulius in honor of Julius Caesar in 44 BC by Mark Antony. A further change was made during the reign of his successor Augustus, when, apparently following the Senate, the plebiscite Lex Pacuvia de Mens Augusto renamed Sextilis Augustus in 08 BC. Some documents state that the date of the change of the name started between 26 and 23 BC, but the date of the Lex Pacuvia is certain. Intercalation. The regular calendar had only 355 days, which meant that it would quickly be unsynchronized with the solar year, causing, for example, agricultural festivals to occur out of season. The Roman solution to this problem was to periodically lengthen the calendar by adding extra days to February. February consisted of 2 parts, each with an odd number of days. The first part ended with the Terminalia on the 23rd, which was considered the end of the religious year, and the 5 remaining days formed the second part. To keep the calendar year roughly aligned with the solar year, a leap month, called the mensis intercalaris, was added from time to time between these two parts of February. The second part of February was incorporated in the intercalary month as its last 5 days, with no change either in their dates or the festivals observed on them. This follows naturally from the fact that the days after the Ides of February or the Ides of Intercalaris both counted down to the calends of March. The Nona and Ides of Intercalaris occupied the normal positions of the 5th and 13th of the month. The 3rd century writer Censorinus says, when it was thought necessary to add an intercalary month of 22 or 23 days, so that the civil year should correspond to the natural year, this intercalation was in preference made in February, between Terminalia, 23rd, and Regifugium, 24th. The 5th century writer Macrobius says that the Romans intercalated 22 and 23 days in alternate years. The intercalation was placed after the 23rd of February and the remaining 5 days of February followed. To avoid the nona falling on a nudine, where necessary, an intercalary day was inserted in the middle of the terminalia, where they placed the intercalary month. This is historically correct. In 167 BC Intercalaris began on the day after the 23rd of February, and in 170 BC it began on the second day after the 23rd of February. Varro, writing in the 1st century BC, says, the 12th month was February, and when intercalations take place the 5 last days of this month are removed, since all the days after the Ides of Intercalaris were counted down. To the beginning of March Intercalaris had either 27 days or 28. There is another theory which says that in intercalary years February had 23 or 24 days and Intercalaris had 27. No date is offered for the Regifugium in 378-day years. The Pontifex Maximus determined when an intercalary month was to be inserted. On average, this happened in alternate years. The system of aligning the year through intercalary months broke down at least twice. The first time was during and after the Second Punic War. It led to the reform of the Lex Sicilia in 191 BC, the details of which are unclear, but it appears to have successfully regulated intercalation for over a century. The second breakdown was in the middle of the 1st century BC and may have been related to the increasingly chaotic and adversarial nature of Roman politics at the time. The position of Pontifex Maximus was not a full-time job. It was held by a member of the Roman elite, who would almost invariably be involved in the machinations of Roman politics, because the term of office of elected Roman magistrates was defined in terms of a Roman calendar year. A Pontifex Maximus would have reason to lengthen a year in which he or his allies were in power, or shorten a year in which his political opponents held office. For example, Julius Caesar made the year of his third consulship in 46 BC 445 days long. Months. In the earliest times, the 3 reference dates were probably declared publicly, when appropriate lunar conditions were observed. After the reforms of Numa, they occurred on fixed days. Calends, first day of the month. It is thought to have originally been the day of the new moon. According to some ancient or modern proposed etymologies of the word, it was derived from the phrase Kalo iluno covella or Kalo iluno novella, meaning, respectively, Holo Juno I call you, and New Juno I call you. An announcement about the nona or in proclaiming the new moon that marks the calends which the pontiffs made every first day of the month on the Capitoline Hill in the announcement hall. Nona, thought to have originally been the day of the half-moon. The nona was 8 days before the Ides, and fell on the 5th or 7th day of the month, depending on the position of the Ides. Ides or Idis, Ides, thought to have originally been the day of the full moon, was the 15th day of March, May, July, and October, and the 13th day of the others. The date preceding the calends, nona, or Ides was Pride, e.g., Prid, id, Mart, equals the 14th of March. Other days were denoted by ordinal number, counting back from a named reference day. The reference day itself counted as the first, so that 2 days before was denoted the third day. Dates were written as A.D. NN, an abbreviation for anti-DMNN, meaning, on the nth day before the named reference day, e.g., A.D. 3 Cal. NOV, equals on the third day before the November calends equals the 30th of October. The value 2 was not used to denote a day before the fixed point, because second was the same as Pride. Further examples of date equivalents are A.D. IV non. Yan equals the 2nd of January. A.D. Vi non. Mai equals the 2nd of May. A.D. Ated. APR equals the 6th of April. A.D. Ated. October equals the 8th of October. A.D. 17 Cal. NOV equals the 16th of October. In detail, the system worked as follows. Months were grouped in days such that the calends was the first day of the month, the Ides was the 13th day of short months, or the 15th day of long months, and the nona was the 9th day before the Ides. All other days of the month were counted backward from these 3 dates. In both long and short months there were 16 days between the Ides of the month and the calends of the next month, and the date referred to the name of the next month, not that of the current month. Thus, for example, the date of the 16th day of March was A.D. 17 Cal. APR. In intercalary years, the first part of February was terminated on the 23rd, i.e., the day of the Terminalia, and the festivals normally held in the last 5 days of February were held instead in the last 5 days of the intercalary month, immediately before the calends of March. The first 22 or 23 days of the intercalary month were inserted between these two parts. So, in long months, and October, the days were divided into first day of the month, 1 day for the calends of the month, second to 6th days of the month, 5 days before the nona 7th day of the month, 1 day for the nona 8th to 14th days of the month, 7 days before the Ides 15th day of the month, 1 day for the Ides 16th to 31st days of the month, 16 days before the calends of the next month. In short months, September, November and December, the days were divided into first day of the month, 1 day for the calends of the month, second to 4th days of the month, 3 days before the nona 5th day of the month, 1 day for the nona 6th to 12th days of the month, 7 days before the Ides 13th day of the month, 1 day for the Ides 14th to 29th days of the month, 16 days before the calends of the next month. In ordinary years, the days in February were divided into first day of the month, 1 day for the calends of February, second to 4th days of the month, 3 days before the nona 5th day of the month, 1 day for the nona 6th to 12th days of the month, 7 days before the Ides 13th day of the month, 1 day for the Ides 14th to 28th days of the month, 15 days before the calends of March. In intercalary years, the days in February were divided into first day of the month, 1 day for the calends of February, second to 4th days of the month, 3 days before the nona 5th day of the month, 1 day for the nona 6th to 12th days of the month, 7 days before the Ides 13th day of the month, 1 day for the Ides 14th day onwards, counting down to a festival or to the calends of the intercalary month. The days of the intercalary month inserted in intercalary years were divided into first day of the intercalary month, 1 day for the calends of the intercalary month, second to 4th days of the intercalary month, 3 days before the nona 5th day of the intercalary month, 1 day for the nona 6th to 12th days of the intercalary month, 7 days before the Ides 13th day of the intercalary month, 1 day for the Ides 14th day onwards, counting down to the calends of March. Some dates were also sometimes known by the name of a festival that occurred on them, or shortly afterwards. Examples of such dates are recorded for the Feralia, Quirinalia, and the Terminalia, though not yet for the Lupercalia. The known examples of such dates are all after the Ides of February, which suggests they are connected with resolving an ambiguity that could arise in intercalary years. Dates of the form A, D, N, Cal, Mart were dates in late February in regular years but were a month later in intercalary years. However, it is much debated whether there was a fixed rule for using festival-based dates. It has been variously proposed that a date like a D. Ex Terminalia implied that its year was not, or might have been, intercalary. When Julius Caesar added days to some months, he added them to the end of the month, so as not to disturb the dates of festivals in those months. This increased the count of all days after the Ides in those months, and had some odd effects. For example, the Emperor Augustus was born in 63 BC on the 23rd day of September. In the pre-Julian calendar, this is 7 days before the calends of October, but in the Julian calendar, it is 8 days. Because of this ambiguity, his birthday was sometimes celebrated on both dates. See discussion in Julian calendar. Nundinal cycle. The Romans of the Republic, like the Etruscans, used a market week of 8 days, marked as A-H in the calendar. A nundinum was the market day. Etymologically, the word is related to Novem 9, because the Roman system of counting was inclusive. The market week is the nundinal cycle. Since the length of the year was not a multiple of 8 days, the letter for the market day changed every year. For example, if the letter for market days in some year was A and the year was 355 days long, then the letter for the next year would be F. The nundinal cycle formed one rhythm of day-to-day Roman life. The market day was the day when country people would come to the city, and the day when city people would buy their 8 days' worth of groceries. For this reason, a law was passed in 287 BC that forbade the holding of meetings of the comitia on market days, but permitted the holding of legal actions. In the late Republic, a superstition arose that it was unlucky to start a year with a market day, and the pontiffs, who regulated the calendar, took steps to avoid it. Because the nundinal cycle was absolutely fixed at 8 days under the Republic, information about the dates of market days is one of the most important tools used for working out the Julian equivalent of a Roman date in the pre-Julian calendar. In the early empire, the Roman market day was occasionally changed. The details of this are not clear, but one likely explanation put forward is that it would be moved by 1 day if it fell on the same day as the festival of Regifugium, an event that could occur at intervals of 3 years. The reason for this movement has not been explained. The nundinal cycle was eventually replaced by the modern 7-day week, which first came into use in Italy during the early imperial period. After the Julian calendar had come into effect in 45 BC, the system of nundinal letters was also adapted for the week. For a while, the week and the nundinal cycle coexisted, but by the time the week was officially adopted by Constantine in AD 321, the nundinal cycle had fallen out of use. For further information on the week, see week and days of the week. Character of the day. Each day of the Roman calendar was marked on the fasta with a letter that designated its religious and legal character. These were F. days when it was legal to initiate action in the courts of civil law. C. a day on which the Roman people could hold assemblies. N. when these political activities and the administration of justice were prohibited. NP of elusive meaning, but marking feriae, public holidays. QRCF, a day when it was religiously permissible for the Rex to call for an assembly. N, for days that were nefasta in the morning, when sacrifices were being prepared, as well as in the evening, while sacrifices were being offered, but were fasta in the middle of the day.